afternoon, Texas Country Today podcast with Dusty Moats and Brian Sprague. And we've got an amazing special guest. But before I introduce that man, let's talk a little bit about our sponsors. First off, let's talk about smithmusic.com. Man, one of the great distributors of all of the statewide and regional Texas music in the state of Texas. We also have R. Watson Boot Company. Man, amazing boots, taking good care of artists as well as rodeo cowboys all around the country and even the common man. Sharp's Leather Supply, Josh Sharp doing guitar straps, adopt kits, all kinds of cool stuff for all of the Texas stars. And then, of course, we have Texas Select Beverage, non-alcoholic beers, coffees, teas, lemonade, and even root beer. Man, and if you're a root beer guy, that stuff's pretty amazing. I got some in my garage. I had one just a few minutes ago before we started this podcast, so we're ready to go. So without further ado, one of my favorite people in the world, good friend of mine, lots of time spent. Brian spent time with him. The contagious hysteria of Mr. Jamie Richards.
I like that. Hey, buddy.
We're blessed, man. How are you, bro? It's good to talk to you.
I'm doing well. Man, thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
You know, you and Brian had some hanging out a week or two ago, and you know, talking to you this morning, not just music, you got some cool personal stuff going on, you know, highlights of your life. I know we're going to talk about all that stuff. What's been going on with you?
Okay. Well, I'm probably busier than I've ever been, and probably more tired than I've ever been too. But I'm getting married September 9th, and that's really the first time for me to actually be really married.
That's awesome.
You know, I had kind of a common law thing with the girl for many, many years, about 15 years, but way back in the day, and she was out of my hometown in Oklahoma area, and she became a big-time Nashville songwriter and won Songwriter of the Year from BMI later down the road. But that's another. Yeah,
we'll talk about the next time. As Jamie's world turns, right, and we'll get you an hourglass. These are the days of Jamie's lives.
I could write an interesting book.
I'm sure you could. You know, that's awesome.
You know, Jamie, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, this is the most excited I've seen Dusty for a podcast since we started this. He was so excited, in fact, he forgot to let me have a little intro time there to say hello to everybody and to mention...
We just went right
Texas
into
Country
it, dude.
Today. I know. Texas Country Today Radio is live streaming on live365.com. You can download the Live 365 app. We are playing all the hottest artists, including Mr. Jamie Richards with his single... Lakeview Grocery Store, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Jamie, glad to have you on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah,
good to see you again.
2 weeks.
Just seen you the other night.
Over at Rhinestone Saloon. Man, you killed it out there. You had that dance floor just spinning nonstop.
Yeah, I was glad to see. I mean, there's a lot of young people there. I was glad to see them out there dancing, you know, too. A lot of them love to dance.
Do you feel like that's kind of a lost art in today's Texas country music? I've always kind of felt that, man, that's one of the key components of when you and I were growing up and playing music and doing all the things. The dancing was one of the most imperative parts, and we just don't see that as much anymore, so it's probably refreshing to you.
I agree. I mean, I think the dancing is what used to bring people out, the music and the dancing, you know, and people love to dance. It kind of, you know, some people like to stand there, but a lot of people like to be involved and dance. And I think it's great. I think it's a good idea for people to dance. I mean, I think that's where it all began.
And hey, dancing, you get thirsty. And what happens when you get thirsty? They buy beers, you know, so.
What?
Right? Yeah, you know. I've often said this, if it wasn't for alcohol, music wouldn't be alive, more likely.
You're probably right, bro.
I mean, there might be 10% of the people go that don't have anything to drink, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that about right? Maybe.
You know, and
I mean, I haven't taken any surveys, but I know that that when it comes to music, goes hand in hand with alcohol, and that's part of it.
You should make that a part of your show. Take a survey. Can we have country music without alcohol? I don't know. But no, Dusty and I were talking. I think it was a couple days ago, and I was talking about some of the most iconic venues here in Texas. And they're all dance halls. You look at John T. Floor's Country Store. You look at Lookabach. You look at the Broken Spoke. You look at Green Hall. They're all dance halls. That's what they were designed for. It's not like other places where they're big concert venues and amphitheaters. Everything around here is
Sure.
dance hall. So I agree. Yeah, got to have dancing.
And luckily, they're all still doing pretty well. All of those dance halls, for the most part, are doing well. So that's good to see, because we don't have that in Oklahoma anymore, and never did have the dance halls they have here. But even the venues in Oklahoma, I've noticed they're thinning out, over the time. I mean, the casinos and stuff, I think, are taking a lot of that crowd.
Interesting.
In Oklahoma.
Yeah, so. It's we've gone through a really interesting change in music over the last 15 to 20 years. And it started, in my mind, from what I could tell, as a slow evolution that was getting away from, like what you're talking about, the dance hall and bar venues. And even the music has changed, right? So, I kind of, gosh, I hate to say this because I'm talking about myself too, but, that 90s has become, like, they're doing tribute bands about 90s artists. And that's the stuff that, like, I remember that was the thing growing up. And that's the kind of style of music you're playing. That's the kind of style that I'm playing. And that Brian, actually, there's a lot of guys that he goes out and covers that's doing it. What do you think about the changes? Because, it was good to see the dancers, but there's a lot of, Texas music has changed over the last 20 years. How do you think that's impacted what you're doing? And what do you think about those changes?
Well, I think when I first got to Texas, which was in 2001, basically, and I was a few years after Fowler and Aaron Watson was pretty close at the same time. Jason Boland was a little bit before me. A few of those artists were like mid-90s, 95, 96, 97. And that's the ones that really, I think, benefited off the Texas sound at the time. And here they come. And then, I think as far as I'm concerned, it got a little bit away from traditional country for several years. In the first part of probably 2010 to 2015 even, I think it got kind of away from country, but I think it's been coming back for a few years now. And I think it has helped me. I'm busy as I pretty much want to be and getting calls for shows a lot. And there was a time when I didn't, get calls for shows a lot. And there's still times when I wonder if I'm still in the business. But most of the time, it's been pretty good, and I'm blessed, and I feel good about it. But I do feel like it's coming back, thanks to, some of the country guys that's come into the scene, Cody Johnson, for instance, and people like that have raised the bar on people putting out traditional country. And, I like a lot of these new artists that have come out. Jake Worthington, I think, is a great singer. I've known him for years, and I always thought he was great. We were in Vegas a couple of years together and hanging out and having a good time. And he's just a good kid, and he sings great. And I like to see that. We need some of that. Everybody can't be red dirt. There has to be whatever the definition of red dirt is. I don't even know anymore. I just sing music and write and sing what I write, and wherever it falls, that's fine, But country guys are getting a little bit more, I think, exposure than they did in the Texas scene, because there was a while when it was really hard. And a lot of radio stations are coming around to playing country music. And, there's only 3 or 4 in the state of Texas that won't play me because they're not very country. And that's
we've had lots of conversations about that, but I dabble in the promotions end of radio with some of the guys that we work with and book and things like that. And what I've noticed is a lot of that, what I call modernized 90s, which I think that's what you are. You're a modernized 90s. That's a good way of saying, hey, man, we put a new fresh coat of paint and got a brand new radio system in there with some subs in the back. It's kind of what I'm talking about. But you're starting to see, if you were to go through any and all of the Texas radio charts, 50 to 60% of it is a modernized country music. That is not what you're seeing in Nashville, which I think is cool, especially in Texas. But I also think this too, and what are your thoughts here? I also believe that the bro country and the branching out of, and I affiliate this, like it's like having a great worship band at a non-denominational church. Having great music at a church that's a worship band brings in all walks of life, and sometimes that's the draw, and it brings somebody to God, right? I believe that with all my heart after doing that off and on. I believe having the diversity of music has introduced the people that are drawn from that pop to that bro country, has introduced people to like you and Jake Worthington, and they realize that there's actually super talented country artists out there. We're seeing it with Lainey Wilson and Luke Combs and all those people across the country that cross over into that pop realm because they have an appeal and their melodies are amazing and stuff like that. Are you kind of feeling that same kind of vibe?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember back, when Garth came out about 1990, I guess, 89 or 90. Clint Black was right there with him. But I can remember when they put their music out, and all of a sudden, Garth became this phenom, because of his stage show, and he had some great songs, great songwriters in Nashville writing with him and him finding great songs. And then all of a sudden, Alan Jackson sells 1 million records. He's never sold 1 million records before. And all of a sudden, Shania Twain comes out, and George Strait's selling 3 or 4 times more records than he ever did before. And it was all because of those acts that came out. And I agree with you, totally.
I watched a really cool, and you may have saw this too, they were interviewing Vince Gill, and they were talking about how the, our forefathers or founding fathers of country music, how they felt, what they would feel about his music and how he feels about the music today. And I thought it was kind of interesting. He said, I think the comment was, I like the way it's going. He said, but I'll tell you, I bet you Merle Haggard listened to my music, didn't necessarily like it or didn't care for it. Things evolve and things change. You don't have to like something to respect what they're doing. That's a key point. I was telling somebody this, like bro country, we were talking a little bit about it. It's not my thing, man. You know that. We know each other. But I don't catch myself going, oh, I got to turn that off. I tap my feet. It's almost like it becomes this something like when you're standing in an elevator, it's music that you just kind of, it doesn't make me just want to die.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, I feel that way. I mean, I hear some bro country stuff that I don't mind. I really don't. I mean, it's not, I have fun messing with it, but making fun of it or something a little bit. But it's just being silly. But I don't hate it all for sure.
Dusty and I disagree on one part of what I consider Texas country music. He doesn't consider it Texas country music. And that's fine. But I think this is right along the lines of what we're talking about, because the alt country, the Whiskey Myers, the Dylan Wheeler, I do a lot of stuff with Wade Bagley. That's a little bit more on the alternative side, but I still consider that Texas country music because it's the undertones of it for me are still country. They just swap out an acoustic for a little bit heavier lick on the guitar, and a little bit more distortion. But how do you feel that has kind of influenced Texas country music on that side of things with the little bit more rock side of country?
Yeah. I agree. In fact, I'm a fan of Whiskey Myers. I like their music. And I've known those guys for a long time. I've done some acoustic stuff, with the guy, the lead singer. Can't think of his name right now. Of course, you know him, I know. Cody. Cody. I mean, he's good talent. I love that band. I'm a Leonard Skinner fan.
They're Southern rock, man. To me, it's Texas Southern rock. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's Leonard Skinner reborn, in my opinion. And Leonard Skinner is one of the greatest bands ever. To me, I love it. I watched a documentary on him the other day on Netflix, and I actually felt a connection with Ronnie Van Zant. Just watching him, I'm like, he and I could have been really good buddies because he thought about stuff kind of like I do, and I can relate and I can understand him. And that was just a hell of a band. And it was a shame when that plane crashed, but I mean, it was such a great band. And I listen to their songs today. I mean, I'll get on Apple and click on Leonard Skinner album and listen to it for hours, driving somewhere. My band may not be loving it, but I'm loving it. That's all that matters.
But there is a reason why every once in a while somebody in the audience goes, "Play some Skinner, dude." Right?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
we all know what that means.
Yeah.
Give me 3 steps or Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Freebird.
Hold on.
Can't leave it.
Now you walk into Guitar Center, haven't you? Or those guitar stores? No Freebird here. And Stairway to Heaven. It's one of those no songs.
So there's this artist that I follow. She anytime anybody yells out Freebird, she says it's $100 for Freebird. And she was shocked because she's never had anybody come up, with $100 for her to sing Freebird. She was at a venue. Somebody literally whipped out $100, and she did not know how to play Freebird. So she had to figure it out real quick, and she pulled it off. But
Get your phone out. With the lyrics.
You know what? I'd probably play Freebird for a lot less than that.
I'd probably do it. Hell, I'll try it. Hell, me and Randy Brown, and we tried it one night at Railhead. I remember just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And Rio was there playing lead, so he can play
funny.
that stuff great. But yeah, I just have fun with it. I mean, I can remember I started my band when I was about 16 or 17 in Oklahoma, and we did some stuff like that. It was great. The crowd loved it. They still do. One quick funny story. This young guy is a Texas artist, and he's just trying to getting started. He did a show with us, and he's not even maybe 18 at the time, and they let him open the show, and they let people in that was younger. And then when I played, they ran them out because they were too young to drink. But there was probably 100, 150 people showed up for him, and they were kids. And he played like Leonard Skinner songs and all this stuff. And all those kids, I could tell watching, thought that those were his songs. But they didn't know who Leonard Skinner was. And I remember thinking when I was his age, that long ago, I was playing those same songs. And they still work.
So
they still work. It's crazy. Because music don't
funny
die.
Story about what you're talking about. You're talking about rock, but I remember I have a 28-year-old kid now that's got 3 grandbabies, and you might remember this. Do you remember when Guitar Hero came out? The first couple editions of Guitar Hero?
Oh, yeah.
What I found is that timeless music, and this is applicable to Leonard Skinner, translates generationally, right? Dude, my kid developed this weird eccentric taste of stuff that's throwback because of Guitar Hero, Godzilla and Frankenstein by the Edgar Winter Band, and he still listens to it today, still likes that stuff, and it really changes taste. Skinner was one of those bands, I think, in my opinion, that translates, that almost transcends the whole deal, and then of course, the mortality of the plane crash really, kind of like Steve Ray Vaughan, it just really endears people to it even more. And you laugh like that 18-year-old kid, man. Kids I know actually know those songs. It's really interesting. And I'm sure you play covers, and a lot of those that might be 25 years old, and some of those kids know those songs.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, cool. Well, man, I know we're here talking a little bit about Lakeview Grocery Store. You had a number 1 with it. Tell us how this song came about, and then, Brian, I know you've got a couple questions for him, too.
I do, yeah.
Well, that song was when I was writing as a staff writer at Curb Publishing in Nashville, and I signed there in 1999 through 2004 or 5, and Walt Wilkins came in 2000, the year after me. So he and I were 2 of about 12 to 15 writers that Curb signed. So we've seen each other all the time, and we wrote songs all the time, and that's why we've had so many cuts from he and I, on my records and his records and a couple others, but it was, we just sit down one day. We usually meet up about 10 in the morning and go into a writer's room or go somewhere and try to write a song. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't, but we always tried to write. We get together, that was our thoughts anyway, try to write a song. But he said, hey, let's write something about where you were raised and stuff, and what was around there, what was around your place, all that, where you. I told him, well, there was a store he goes, let's just write down a list of things at that store. And that's kind of how we got it started. And everything in that song is pretty true. It's pretty all true. I mean, that's really what happened. The store was about close to a mile from my house, and I would walk it like that was such a big deal to get to do that. Either walk to the store or ride. I had a mini bike, ride the mini bike to the store, being just a young kid, 12, 13 years old. And it was where I live, the dirt is super red. I mean, this red dirt there's a reason why it's called that, because it really is a color in Oklahoma. I mean, it's just red, So, and that where I'm at is super red dirt. And we'd walk to that store, and Walt and I just sat down and wrote that song, and probably spent 5 or 6 hours writing it, and maybe even came back and touched it up another time, to look at all the lines, make sure all the lines work good, and demoed the song, and then it just, put on the shelf with the other 300 songs I'd written, and not much happened with it. And I kept thinking it'd be a good song for me to record eventually. And we finally did, and I asked Walt, I said, do you want to sing background harmony on this record? And he was like, man, I can't reach it. Let my wife do it. So that's Walt's wife singing on that single, Cut of Mine, on that record. Which I
wow.
think
So
neat.
Tina's doing that with you, huh?
Yeah.
That's cool,
that
man.
harmony, yeah.
Well, I didn't realize that, it's interesting. I'm sure you got a bunch of stories about Walt. I was talking to another guy that was up there around the same time and was doing some stuff. And, man, you guys had a pretty historic presence up there in the Nashville area. I'm sure there's probably some crazy stories from all those times, y'all hanging out and doing your thing. Not that I want you to disclose any of that. What was your favorite part in comparison to being in Nashville in comparison to what you're doing writing with people down now? What are the two of the little favorite parts from being in Nashville and being from here in Texas doing it?
Well, I believe in Nashville, I got fortunate enough to write with a lot of Hall of Fame writers. I mean, people that wrote some of the biggest songs from behind closed doors and I wrote with a lot of those guys that wrote those, Rory Burke and Don Fremer and Paul Kraft and all these guys that wrote all these big hits. Jim Rushing, Larry Cordell wrote Highway 40 Blues. He and I wrote a lot of songs together. I've had a lot of good relationships. And I was wanting to be a songwriter, singer so bad at that point, even though I was working a day gig as a carpenter, framing houses for years and years, till I finally broke in 99, finally got to quit. I mean, it was over 10 years before I really got a deal. Mark Wright did cut sides, and we had some developmental record deals, but Joe Galante signed me to a deal in RCA, so I had some stuff happen, but I never got to completely. I mean, people think that's funny. I had a deal in RCA, and yet I still work my day job, because it ain't what you think it is. I mean, it's a deal. And if it works out, eventually, of course, they pay you, they sign you as a writer, and you make a salary and all this stuff. And that's what ended up happening at Curb. When I finally signed with Curb in 99, they gave me a record deal and a writer deal, publishing deal. Well, they kept the publishing deal, decided not to put me out as an artist. So here we go. And I signed like a 5-year writing deal with them. But where's I going with this?
Well, talk about your difference in your favorite parts of Nashville and your favorite part of Texas.
Oh, yeah, favorite part. Yeah, well, I remember I wanted it so bad, and I would go hear all these great songwriters, and they had such an impact on me as a writer, and they taught me how to write songs, a lot too. And I think that I kind of wanted to be in that group. And next thing I know, a few years down the road, I was in that group. I wasn't in the group as having a bunch of big hits, but I was with those people. And that was a neat deal for me in Nashville, to be able to all of a sudden be friends with all these guys that I just dreamed of being like. And all of a sudden, I kind of was like them in a way. I wasn't making millions of dollars writing songs. I was making a living at it, but I was hanging out with the guys that wrote all the hits that I love. Yeah. And it was a cool thing to happen to me. And I think without that, I probably wouldn't ever have gotten to be a decent songwriter. I think that helps. I think a lot of people in Texas could benefit off writing with some really good writers in Nashville.
That's a
Big benefit.
true statement.
It's funny to hear you say, and Brian, I got to apologize. I didn't mean to ask that question. I was just with Scott Shawn White last night, and so for whatever reason, some of our conversation is kind of carried over with you. It's interesting to hear you say that because it's something almost parallel to what he said. He was like, he talked a lot about, how he felt like, they taught him how to write, in essence. That he was a good writer before, but they really taught him how to tap into whatever that is. And then I think that hearing you describe that, and, being here in Texas, he's just kind of built upon that network. And actually, he's becoming, and maybe this is something for you too, he said that he felt like he's becoming one of those guys that's helping impact young writers because he's bringing some of that knowledge and education here. Is that something that you feel that's happened for you?
Yeah, I think I had a call from a guy a message from a guy just 2 days ago, wanting to talk to me about writing. A lot of young artists have reached out to write, and I got to get back in that gear. I've got to get married and get that done. I got to do all this stuff, but I really do need to get back into writing because I have really dropped the ball. But I have had so many opportunities to write down in Texas and haven't written a whole lot. If I get an idea, I'll sit down and write it, and I may only be writing 2 or 3 songs a year. I mean, that ain't nothing. I was writing that many a week.
So tell me a little bit about that because, I know me growing up, Nashville was kind of a mystery. There's a very simplistic thought of the music industry, I think, from a lot of people's point of view, and I know better now, but I didn't when I was a kid. A lot of people think you write your songs, you get a record deal, you record, and boom, that's it. But, a lot of people don't realize a lot of these record companies employ staff writers. Can you give me just a really simplistic view of what a staff writer is?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I was at Curb. I mean, I wanted the record deal, and, we talked to producers, and it went down that road, but, it never ended up as being a full-fledged. I had the contract, but it never came out because of one reason or the other. I mean, if there's 100 doors to go through to become a successful singer artist out of Nashville, not necessarily a writer, but an artist, if you make it through 99 of them, you still ain't going to become successful. You got to get through all of them. And I didn't get through all of them. I got through most of them, and it was sitting at a point to where it could have easily happened for me, or it could have easily not. And of course, we did sides with 2 or 3 different companies. But as a staff writer, if you can get in the right clique of people and you write with those same people, and those same people have the right contacts to get songs to the right producers and all this stuff, you're going to get some cuts, and you may get a lot of cuts. That's why there for a while, to me, there was 10 or 15 people writing every song that came out of Nashville for years.
Well, since '99 with Curb, Shane McNally, he's one of those guys. Yeah.
There you go. Now, and I don't want anybody to be mad at me, but looking at him, I never thought he could write a song at all, and I never wrote with him, but I'm like, who's this guy? I mean, this doesn't look like a country songwriter, and he's wrote some killer stuff. But I wouldn't have bet anything he would have when I met him.
It's interesting. Some of the people, I'm so blessed to be doing these podcasts. I've had you on one of the other shows that I work, or radio show, and it's amazing. You're talking about you wouldn't think somebody looks like a songwriter. Do you know how many people I say that about? That came out of you? Man, I've known you for 10 years. All you can mutter was one sentence, and it was under a shot of tequila and a sandwich. You know what I mean? And that came out of you. You kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. They have the voice. They need to start a show called The Wordsmith.
Right.
Play the song and see what the guy looks like he could write it or not, right?
It's songwriting it's hard. I mean, anybody, I have a lot of guys come up to me and they say, man, I wrote 3 songs yesterday. And I'm like, I don't even want to hear them because I know what they are because you wrote 3 songs yesterday.
Yeah.
That's too fast. Take your time.
Well,
So how long do you think a song should take then?
Well, I mean, honestly, if you write 100 songs, I think 10 of them will probably be decent, and 90 of them will not be. 90 of them will be okay, and 10 of them might be pretty good. 3 of them might be great. I think you got to write a lot of songs to write a good song. But I don't believe that you can write 3 or 4 songs a day and expect them to have anything much to them, in my opinion, because I spend a lot of time on lyrics. A lot of people may not. And if you don't spend any time on lyrics, then yeah, you probably can write a good melody in 2 or 3 of them a day. I believe that, maybe. I never could. I mean, I wrote a song in an hour before, but I didn't write 3 songs that day in an hour. I mean, an hour each. I mean, I wrote 1 song in an hour because I got lucky. Sure. But generally it takes, I'd say a couple of days to write a song to me. Like you'll sit down and spend 5, 6, 7 hours on it, and then come back and do it again the next day and spend that much time again before you really finish it. I believe it takes a while.
Yeah,
I don't know how anybody writes a 10-minute song.
And think about it. We've had the gist of the idea. I don't know if you've had this happen. Songs constantly evolve too, even if it only takes. I've had something that's come out in 8 or 10 minutes, and the major idea is there, but you work on it in tidbits. Change lyrics or words,
sure.
but it's kind of like the word overnight success, right? I signed the deal yesterday and we're big today.
Yeah.
But man, I had 20 years going into it. A song like that for me is interesting. It's so interesting how you and Scott say some parallel things. They were talking a little bit about songwriting yesterday, and you'll probably agree. It's almost like working a muscle, man. If you're lifting weights and you want that muscle to grow, you got to do the reps. And surprisingly, when the magic happens, you're going to get that one big lift. You're looking for that moment that all the stars align. And if the stars align, it's like you're creating your own luck. You've been practicing, so that's what comes out is magic, right?
Yeah. And I do believe that a great line and a great hook can fall right out of you. Don't get me wrong. And I think, like you said, I think you can write a piece of a great song in 10 minutes. But I think you will have to go back over it and kind of make sure that it's good. I mean, there's been great songs, I'm sure, written in just a few minutes, and lots of them, but it's not.
Well, and in talking about songs you've written, you've got an album coming out in September that is kind of a throwback, and I gotta say, whatever camera you got shot on for these album covers, man, it's working because it took some years off.
Well, that was a long time ago. That was probably I was probably like 35 in that picture, something like that. I'm 61 years old now.
You're 61, man. You're still moving and shaking. You know what I mean? Hey, are you like fine wine or old whiskey?
Well, probably a little of both. I don't know. But that was. I remember that. I remember when that photo shoot happened. Yeah, I was in Nashville. Probably had just about the time I signed with Curve. That's about 2000, right in there.
What's the?
So, that's 23 years.
What's your? What's going to be the I guess the single that's going to be the first one off of it?
Well, I don't even know if I'm going to have a single off this album. I think a guy named Mike McCary helped me with this, but he was kind of his idea. He said, man, you got so many good songs in the can, they call them, that's never been put out on any album. No one's heard them. And so maybe we should put out a 90s country album and just leave it alone and put it out just like you did it back then. And that's what we did. And that's simple as it can be.
That's what, when you were talking about wanting to write and stuff, and I know if you're anything like me, we've got bukus of content that's just kind of sitting around that's never been utilized. And man, the crazy thing, and I'm going to bring up Matt Mason because I know you're probably familiar with Matt. Matt's a great writer in and amongst himself, but like you were talking about demos, you know, some of his most streamed songs, Jamie, were demos that he just released, and they were great. They were good quality, and man, he's making, you know, crap tons of mailbox money off just some songs that went viral. And the cool part about it is there's something kind of in today about acoustic versions and throwback and so I'm excited for you, because I'm sure there's going to be, you know, knowing what you've done, you know, we've known each other for a few years, and then I knew of you before here now. Man, I'm sure there's going to be some gems in there that, you know, tell some that you think might be sleepers, that don't sleep on these songs. They're good ones. Tell me some of those sleepers on this album.
Well, you know, there's 2 songs on here that's just guitar vocals, really. I mean, they're not even full production, which I think you're right. I think people enjoy that kind of music. So I didn't worry about that. I just went ahead and put it out there. But, you know, back in the day, you know, all those guys playing on those records were the same guys that were playing on Garth Brooks records, because they're the same musicians, because they can't get master sessions all the time. So they played demo sessions too, just to make extra money. Like, you know, Bruce Bowden, you know, some of those guys that are such great steel players, all of them, you know, whatever they play. And those guys are the same ones that played on some of these songs that's going to be on this 16 records. And I mean, they sound great. A lot of them tracks sound.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you're talking Nashville again. What's the difference between a demo session and a master session?
A demo session is when a songwriter writes, like when I was writing for Curb, they would say, I'd say, well, I want to do a session, and they would take you in, or you'd go in and cut 5 songs, and you had 3 hours to do it. So we go in and cut 5 songs. So you take all your songs in, you play them for your boss at Curb, and he'd say, well, I like that one, I like this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Do those 5. So then you'd put together the session players in the day, and they'd all meet at, you know, 9:30. Session start at 10, be over at 1, and you had to cut 5 songs and pretty much go in and sing them and mix them the next day. So you had, you know, a couple of half days in the studio to cut 5 tunes, and that's what a lot of these are. And they take these songs and they pitch them, and that's why they're a demo. They're a demonstration of what you just wrote to play for an artist that are looking for songs. They play it for Tracy, they play it to whoever, and then if they cut your song, you know, I got a few cuts, but, you know, never did have a big giant hit, but I had, you know, Hal Ketchum and people like Ken Mellons cut a bunch of my songs, stuff like that. Here lately I had a Cody Jinks cut, you know, I had a Fowler cut Loose Loud, which was neat years ago, and hell, he kicks off every show with that song still to this day. And I wrote that one with him. Of course, I just played that one with the guitar for him, you know. And he finished it up too. He wrote the verses for it. But anyway, that's what a demo is. It's just something to let a producer, a manager, an artist, whatever's listening for songs. I had several songs taken for George Strait. He never cut any of them, but, you know, I probably had 50 songs or 100, and he cut 10 or 12 of them, and I didn't make the cut. So that's the way it works.
How does that differ from what you do now in the studio? Because I know I've gone to the studio a couple times with Dusty, and a lot of times it's just laying down some vocal tracks. Sometimes it's laying some acoustic tracks, and then they kind of mix it all together. But are you doing? Obviously, I think more people are doing singles now than full albums. But are you still using that same process, or do you kind of just piece it together now?
Probably not really exactly like that, because I mean, if I had, like, I went ahead and cut a full album. I think it was in 2021, 2 years ago, last time I cut anything, and we went in and cut, I think 12 or 13, whatever, on that record. But, you know, I don't know that I would do a full album again. I might. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to do a full album still. I mean, you can always use them as demos, like you said. You could pitch them. I mean, a lot of people that I know, songwriters that went in and cut their own albums, ended up getting a lot of cuts, and they weren't even trying to get cuts. They just got cuts from people hearing their record, and other artists ended up cutting their songs because of that album that they put out back in the day on their own. And all of a sudden, they get cuts from whoever. Merle Haggard even cut some songs. I mean, people, big artists, cut some songs off people's original album that they put out trying to get started on their own. So who knows how it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's the stuff. It's interesting. The work I did in Nashville in the early 2000s. I remember. You're going to laugh at this, Jamie, and you'll tell. I remember some of these Texas artists were talking about Nashville sucks, and man, where they're all using their own bands and all this fun stuff, and man, you see how the studio work is here now. Hell, 70% of the players on all the stuff that's coming out that you hear on Texas radio are the same guys. And just like what it was in Nashville back when they said Nashville sucks, man. It's funny to me. You know, there's some efficiency to how they did some things, and I've seen that with the album too. Let me ask you. You know, you talked about you cut a full album, you cut a single. I know I talk with a lot of guys all the time. I've got a new album coming out myself, but you know. What do you feel like the positives are in releasing an album versus a single? Because, you know, the world has changed a little bit musically, right? It's become a single society in content. Now, I hate it, but that's just the way that a lot of it goes. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think, I mean, back in the day when CDs, you know, I sold a lot of CDs. I mean, you can make a CD for $1.08. You can sell them for $15 or $20. So that's pretty good profit, you know. But they put into
killed that for sure.
Not putting CD in your cars or whatever you call it anymore. But you know, a vinyl album is another way people are putting out full albums. There's people cutting vinyls now, and I did one on that 2021 record. I just had I don't remember how many. I think I had 100 made. Vinyls is all, and sold them for $40 a piece, and we sold them. But you know, I'm glad I didn't have 200, because I probably wouldn't have sold 200.
Well, being an independent artist has a lot of its privileges. I know you've done the Nashville thing, Jamie. What do you think is the? Oh, that's okay. What do you think is the? What do you think the biggest advantage to what you're doing right now is in comparison to what you were doing back then? I think a lot of times this is a great educational question for people that are thinking, oh, I want to be signed. Well, I know for me, there's a lot of freedom in what I do. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, I think in the day that, you know, people want to be signed because that was the only way you could get on the radio is if you were on a major label. Not like that anymore. I mean, any of these little music companies in Texas, unless someone is paying for your promotion on that album, I don't see a reason for having anybody involved except yourself. Because you can put your stuff online as easy as anybody else can. I'm going to get some
Bubba,
paper.
do you want to know something, Jamie? Hey, listen, I got to tell you, you know, after retiring, taking a break, I'm a businessman first. Straight up. That's what I am first. Music is is my business now. And you're dead on, I think, in my mind about, you know, there's a lot of things as an independent artist that you can handle yourself. And here's some reality. Everybody's got their hand out. Everybody. And we have control. And so think about the hate mail. I'm going to get some too. But at the end of the day, we have control over what we're doing, right, Jamie? And so I think for me, one of the benefits of what you're doing is, man, first off, you're in control of your career. And think about this. You have all this value, and your new album, what we've been talking about, is another prime piece of this. You have all this valuable content that somebody else, if somebody was involved, they'd say, oh, there is no value to that. But the reality is people that know and love you, your fans, it's valuable to them, and you know it. You probably had somebody say, man, you ought to release that, and probably more than one, which is why you're doing it. You know, you're kind of giving somebody something what you want. And the cool part about it is if you're with a deal, people would never see anybody's ears. No one would even know you did it. Oh. And there's love and heart and memories and words and situations that have happened to you that you as a storyteller, man, nobody'd even get to know.
That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's probably a big plus when you put it that way. Because if you're right, if somebody else had control of the career, they wouldn't want to mess with it. Probably something like this, you know. Let's get some new songs, let's dye your hair.
Well, it would be all of us. They'd have to hit all of us, right? Brian's getting if you notice, Jamie, Brian's got some gray up underneath those headphones too. I haven't teased him about it yet, but after this call.
Yeah, after this call. Yeah. So, Jamie, it is July 18th right now that we're recording this. It'll be out this Friday. But where can people find you? What's the next stop on your busy schedule that they can come see you? Where can they find your merch? All that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't have a lot of merch on. JamieRichardsBand.com is my website. I have some CDs on there and maybe the vinyl, but no, I don't have any merch really on there to mount to anything. But they can check out my schedule there for sure, JamieRichardsBand.com. The whole schedule's on there. Thursday, which is a couple of days from now, I'm playing Do-Si-Do's down in the Woodlands, Texas, North Houston. It's a great venue. It's I don't know if Dusty's played it or not, but it's got great sound. It's a barn that was in Kentucky. They took it down board by board, brought it down to the Woodlands and rebuilt it, and it's got the best acoustics in it and just the best system. It sounds fantastic. Anybody that plays there, and the big boys are playing it. I'm talking about the big Nashville guys, pop guys. I mean, Christopher Cross, all those kind of bands. They come in and play it too. He has music like 6 or 7 nights a week. And it's always a pretty decent band. I mean, some of them are huge. You know, tickets can be $125, $200 a person, or they can be $24 like what mine are. But anyway, that's when we're playing there. It's Thursday this week, and then Saturday we're coming back to play the Oasis in Midlothian. Good old beer.
Love that place.
And then Sunday. Yes, I like that place. And Sunday we're flying to Mexico to do guitar swim-up bars with some other Texas artists. It'll be about my 10th or 12th year in a row to play it, and we're going down to Playa del Carmen for a week.
Hey, man, it sounds are you doing any vacationing at all? Because I know your mind has been jumbled with weddings and new releases. Are you going to actually get any time to relax and sit on the beach and do nothing?
I'm going to kind of do that Sunday. Went down there a week, but it's pretty neat this year because I'm going to Alaska for a week on a cruise to do music, and then I'm going to Costa Rica the end of October for another 4 or 5 days. So I've got 3 music trips in this year, which is like 4 or 5 months left.
Have you ever been to Costa Rica before? So, man, what I like about Costa Rica, and I'm going to tell you a funny story because you're going to laugh about this. Man, it's got a little bit of everything. It's got beach, it's got rainforest, it's got city. But the thing I was in Costa Rica one time, and the thing I remember the most about it was there's this beach that's a hill, right? And let me tell you what they do. They love American tourists, right? And I'm talking it's a hill, and it's a hill of sand. So you go walk, So man, they got like a lift that will take you down the hill for free, but they charge you $25 to ride back up.
Sounds about right.
We'll get you down there. Yeah. But if you don't want to walk, and those little inside the little town squares, kind of like Puerto Rico, man. Little markets, the food is amazing, dude. Dig that. You've been to Mexico, but if you've never been to Costa Rica is just bro. And I was there just doing it, doing some business for other stuff. But golly, you're gonna dig that, dude. That is so cool. Well, cool, man. I'm glad you got to relax, Brian. What you got, brother?
Man, I'm super excited that I got to see you at the Rhinestone. I've obviously been following you since T3R when you were nominated for Male Vocalist of the Year. We still got to sit down and do our kind of like a featured interview kind of thing with you. This was kind of that, but I got to get you playing an acoustic set sometime.
Yeah, I think we talked on the phone a couple times because I was kind of helping you out with the ins and outs on that award show. I was thinking about, because you were kind of wondering about what was happening.
Well, it was kind of weird. As media, they didn't give me any information. So all the information I got about where to be, when to be there was from artists. How ironic is that?
Yeah. That's stuff. That'd be opposite of that in Nashville.
Jamie, when you get back from all of your runnings around, and if you're still close, you have lived 10 minutes from me or been here 10 minutes from me for a year and a half, 2 years. And we've never connected to have a beer, have a sandwich, or nothing. We've just kind of met in passing.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we all get together and connect. And we need to get Brian in on a songwriting session and see if he can give us any help.
If anything, I just write lyrics. I can't write a tune to save my life. So.
Well, that's all right.
Well, Jamie already told you lyrics are the most important, didn't he, Brian?
I know.
So you'll fit in just fine.
I got a book full of them. So. I think Dusty needs to tell us a little bit about, I think it's R. Watson Boots and Smith Music and a couple others. So,
well, again, man, thank you, Jamie, for coming on, dude. It's always great to see you. I'm super happy, super proud, super excited for the next chapter of your life with your beautiful bride. Love you guys. Man, excited for your trips. But, man, Let's talk a little bit about our sponsors who make this thing possible. It's R. Watson Boots. I don't know if you're familiar with this, man, but they are out of Joshua, Texas, man, helping a lot of country singers and as well as country musicians and rodeo people with their eccentric footwear. What did Merle Haggard call it? Manly footwear. Boots, leather boots are still in style for manly footwear. That's R. Watson Boots, and they have female footwear too, just for you, right, bro? So, and then we've got SmithMusic.com distribution, great partner of ours. Have been doing the Texas music scene for years, live at Billy Bob's, all those kind of things. Also, Sharp's Leather Supply. If you don't know Josh Sharp, you know Randy. That strap that Randy has, that guitar strap, and that DOP kit that his wife bought him, that was made by Josh Sharp. I've got one. Josh Ward has a couple. Jamie, you need to get you one. We need to connect you up with that guy. He's been doing stuff for a lot of different artists. And then, of course, my buddy Dana over at Texas Select Beverage. Man, the oldest running non-alcoholic beer in the state of Texas. And also with teas, coffees, lemonade, and, of course, my favorite, root beer. I like root beer, man. Can't get enough. Brian, what you got?
Well, I just wanted to say, so again, Texas Country Today Radio and Live 365. You can also, if you don't want to download the app, just go to txcountrymusic.net or txcountrytoday.com, and there's players on the website. But some things that you don't want to miss coming up this week. I got a crazy week for the radio and for Texas Country Music News. I got an interview with Jenna Catherine coming up tomorrow. I got an interview with Taylor Sweely coming up this week. I also got an interview with Grady Spencer at The Work.
Oh, cool, man.
Down at Panther Island. What else do I got going? I think that's it. I think I got 3 interviews this week. And then this Saturday, I will be down at Little Red's Longhorn Saloon in the Stockyards.
It's a great place.
And we're going to be recording and covering Joe King for a future show on the radio. So,
man, dude, it sounds like you got your hands full. Go ahead, Jamie. Yeah, Joe's amazing. Well, guys, hey, Jamie, thank you again for joining us, brother. Brian, thank you as always. I'm actually going to Oklahoma with Smith Music tonight for a music mixer, it sounds like. So I'm going to go grab a shower, and I'm going to head up to your neck of the woods, Jamie. I certainly will, my friend. Well, cool, guys. Well, thank you, man.
Yep.